Hi grade 9s, this is the last video in the chemistry unit for grade 9 science. So today we're going to talk about physical and chemical properties and physical and chemical changes. So take a second and pause the video if you're not done copying these terms down on page 4 by the time I've talked through them. Okay, so physical properties. So this is a property that can be determined kind of without changing the chemical structure. So I could look at an element, a hunk of metal or something, and I could tell you that it's silver. It can be observed, right? That's a color. Or it could be measured, maybe its density or boiling point or melting point. Those are physical properties because I can boil water and take the temperature and understand that it boils at 100 degrees Celsius without changing the chemical compound, so H2O. A chemical property is a property used to characterize how the material is going to react. Okay, so characterize the materials in reactions that change their identity. So I have to actually observe this chemical reaction to see how it's going to happen. A physical change is a change in matter in which no new substances are formed. So if I take an ice cube, that chemical formula is H2O. That's the solid, okay? I could pull that ice cube and put it on my counter and it would melt and be H2O, which is a liquid. Okay, I could put that H2O in a pot and turn my stove on and I could boil it and that would be H2O, the gas. But the way the atoms link up stays the same and the chemical formula is still H2O no matter if it's in the solid, liquid, or gas stage. A chemical change is a change in matter that results in the formation of new substances. Okay, so if I run electricity through water, then I can break it down into hydrogen gas and oxygen gas, and that actually changes the substance. New substances are formed. There's no more water if I run electricity for it. It's just hydrogen gas and oxygen gas. Okay, so this takes a little bit of practice to get used to. Okay, so remember, matter is anything with mass and volume. So mass, it has weight and it takes up space. So this could be your textbook, it could be your, the water in your water bottle, or it could be the air in the room. So physical properties describe a characteristic of a substance, okay, that can be observed or measured without changing its composition, so without changing what that substance is made up of. Okay, so I can look at it and see it, or sometimes I can melt it or boil it or things like that, and I'll observe those properties. So they can include things like luster, how shiny something is. So if I was looking at a piece of metal, like aluminum, like think of aluminum foil, I might say that that's shiny silver, that would be the color, but it's not transparent, right? I can't see through the aluminum like I can see through glass or I can see through water, okay? And sometimes things like Kool-Aid, a juice, would be clear, like it would have transparency, I could see through it, but it might be red if it's cherry Kool-Aid. Other physical properties can be measured or observed with the appropriate tool. So if I had a balance or a scale, I could measure the mass. If it was a piece of metal, I could put it in a beaker of water and measure the volume, how much space it takes up. I could, again, melt it or boil it with a thermometer and measure the temperature that they melt or boil. Those are my physical properties. But again, physical properties I'm just observing. Chemical properties, in order to observe a chemical property, I have to actually make that chemical change happen. I have to observe that chemical change. So chemical properties are characteristics that will describe how the substance will react with other substances when it changes into new substances. So if you are to put a newspaper in your campfire, you know what's going to happen to that newspaper, and you probably can bet that it's going to look like that black kind of charcoaly stuff when it's done. So a chemical change always results in the formation of new substances with different properties. So those are physical and chemical properties. And sometimes those properties describe the changes. So physical changes, the substances sometimes seem a little different, but the way the atoms link up is the same. So you have to kind of remember, I think it's grade 7 science when you talk about the kinetic particle theory. And, if we change from solid to liquid to gas, okay, if I change from solid to liquid, that's called, melting. Liquid to gas, that could be, boiling. Okay, gas to liquid is, or evaporating, right? Evaporation over here. Gas to liquid, if I go this way, is condensation, right? Happens on your lemonade in the winter. Liquid to solid is freezing, okay? And I can go directly from solid to gas or gas to solid, and that's called sublimation, okay? So you have to remember those terms as well. So again, physical changes, the way the substances, they might seem different. So liquid water might seem different than water vapor, like water gas, or an ice cube, but the way the substances link up is the same. Again, it's still a hydrogen bonded to an oxygen bonded to another hydrogen. So it's a physical property if it changes shape or size. So if I cut my lawn, if I tear paper, I'm changing the shape or size. Okay, but it's still paper even if it's smaller. Okay, if I tear paper into two halves, I have paper. I've just changed the shape of it. If it dissolves, this one's a tricky one. If I dissolve salt in water, if I dissolve Kool-Aid in water, it might look different because I've mixed red Kool-Aid with clear water, but it's the same. If I wanted to get my salt back from my salt and water mixture, I could evaporate the water off, and eventually my salt crystals would all be there. It changes state or phase, right? So that's what we talked about up here, okay? Going from solid to liquid to gas. So it freezes, it boils, it evaporates, it condenses. Often we say this is reversible. Okay, that's a tricky one. Again, that applies mainly to the changes of state or phase and sometimes the dissolving. But again, if I tear paper, I can't get my paper back again necessarily. So that one's kind of, I'll put that one in brackets just because it's not always the best example, but sometimes it helps to think of it that way. So examples are ice melting and then refreezing. Those are physical changes. Chemical changes change the way the molecules link up and make new substances. Okay, so if I have a chunk of sodium and I mix it with chlorine gas, I get table salt. Okay, so, oops, sorry, I get table salt. So chlorine gas is a poisonous gas. Sodium is a super reactive metal. Remember, it's our alkali metal. It's very reactive. Okay, so I wouldn't want to eat either sodium or chlorine, but NaCl, that's table salt. We need that to survive. It's really important in our nervous system and our nerves firing. So that's a chemical change. Okay, so it's a chemical change if it burns. Okay, so think if I fry an egg, I'm kind of cooking or frying that egg. I'm adding heat to it, and it's actually changing the way the atoms link up. If its temperature changes without heating or cooling, when I fry an egg, I expect it to get a little warmer, but sometimes I'll mix two substances together, and it'll get really hot, and I haven't actually put it on the element to heat it up or put it in the freezer to cool it down. It bubbles or makes a gas. Okay, it might change color, so I might put in tin foil and a blue liquid, and I get kind of a red solid out. Okay, that's a change in color. Light's produced, so again, if it's burning or light's producing, or it forms a precipitate. So this is a new term that you should kind of be familiar with. This is when two liquids are mixed and I get a solid. Okay, that's called a precipitate. So what you're going to be asked to do, and that's it for this. So what you're going to be asked to do is to do the worksheet when you come to class next class. You're going to be asked to classify whether they're physical or chemical properties of substances, and then using these charts here on the page before, burning, temperature, using these kind of indicators, classify whether it's a physical or chemical change. Anyway, that's it for chemistry grade 9s. You feel free to rewatch the videos as much as you need to understand. We'll do this worksheet in class next time, then we'll review, and then we'll have an assessment on it.